are being made by the Trump campaign. You know, what is? Tell me what you have that you think is crystal clear to you at this point.
Well, there's a couple important things here. Number one, we had a court order issued by the Commonwealth Court, which is the equivalent of the appellate court here in the state of Pennsylvania, which granted us rights yesterday to access and watch all of the counting which transpired. When I presented that order to the Board of Election Supervisor, he summarily dismissed it. When I presented it to the sheriff's office to enforce it, they refused here in the city of Philadelphia. And so then the elections officials basically told me that they would be willing to be held in contempt as opposed to adhering to the court order which was issued. They immediately appealed our ability to go in and monitor the ballots in accordance with the laws of the state of Pennsylvania. And the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania then stayed the lower court's ruling that prevented us from being within 6 feet of any of the ballots being processed. And the report that you just mentioned, your reporter just mentioned that they're supposedly separating these ballots, which are supposed to be coming in after the deadline. Because we've had no access to these ballots whatsoever. The hall that we're trying to do this in is probably about 60,000 square feet. The ballots are being counted some 80 yards away, not 80 feet, 80 yards away. And so it is impossible to see what's transpiring. We've asked for open and honest transparency, and they've refused that.
Let me ask you a question. I watched the news conference today, and Lisa Dealey, the elections commissioner, she said there are GOP and Democrat, both, observers inside, and she says that they have been there since the beginning. She also said that everything is on camera and able to be observed by anybody who wants to watch what's going on inside there.
Well, the bike rack, which they've established, which is a metal barrier, is as close as 12 feet to the closest table and as far away when they move the ballots to the back end of the hall of 80 yards away, almost the length of a football field. We have no ability to be on the other side of the bike rack. The court order which was issued gave us full authority to be within 6 feet of the entire process, and they threatened to have us arrested if we crossed over the barricades, even though the judge gave us the permission to do that.
Yeah.
So while there have been people in the hall, they've been stationed behind bike rack with the threat of arrest if they crossed over that, even with a valid court order in hand. If there's nothing to hide, why wouldn't they want each party, both the Republicans and the Democrats, the ability to see what they're doing?
That's a legitimate question, and it is transparency is a legitimate avenue in all of these states, and you all are going down that transparency road. As far as fraud, you're saying you need time to find the evidence. Is that correct? And let me ask you a second question. The segregated ballots, are there enough of them to outperform 19,625 increase for Joe Biden?
So the short answer is we have a number of signed affidavits from individuals who have personally witnessed the fraud that has taken place in the state of Pennsylvania. And as the viewers know, an affidavit is a sworn document under the penalty of perjury that says they've seen this, and we'll release those when appropriate.
What did they see specifically, Corey?
So I'll give you one example. A woman contacted us who owns a funeral home. She went through the last 12 people who she buried. We found that we looked up one of the gentlemen. He registered to vote 6 days after he had been buried in the ground and voted in the election here in the state of Pennsylvania.
And you have the documentation to show for that?
Excuse me?
You have the documents to show that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not anecdotal. That's empirical information that we have. It's readily available. It's all based on publicly available data. But more than that, to Brett's question was, are there enough votes to overturn the current deficit? You bet there are. But since we can't see what's transpiring, since this is all done under the secrecy and the cover of darkness, it's impossible for us to actually discern if these ballots are supposed to be separated are actually being separated.